I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me again and for listening to this podcast. I'm going to do a monologue this week, and one of the reasons is that there's something I've been thinking a lot about over the last week, and it's been on my mind, and I suppose I wanted to talk through it, I guess, with all of you guys. This week, I released a special on Fox Nation called Surviving Hamas. You can catch it on Fox Nation at the moment, but it's got interviews with people who were caught up in those terror attacks on October 7th. And there's one character who I interviewed for one of the specials in it. She's a 21-year-old woman. She's called Maya Regev, and she was captured, taken hostage, abducted by Hamas that day from the music festival early in the morning and taken into Gaza. And there was something that she said to me at the worst time of that abduction. And I'll break her story down briefly for you. You know, it was about 6:45 when Hamas terrorists stormed out of Gaza. They surrounded almost the music festival. Over 300 people were killed there. But Maya, her brother, and their best friend Omer, they managed to reach a car and they were trying to drive away when they were surrounded and caught by Hamas. And there's actually an audio call that we play, which is her screaming at the time she's taken and telling her father she's been taken away. They were all taken into Gaza. She was paraded around the people, badly injured. Her left foot had been almost shot off completely. It was dangling on. She had been shot in her right leg as well. And yet they were raising her head up and cheering about her inside Gaza once they took her prisoner. She then was taken into the tunnels under Gaza, and she was trying to move along, but she couldn't. And someone in Hamas took a gun, he put it to her head, and he said, "You've got to go," or, and she knew it was that, or he was going to kill her. And she found a way to push through. And the way she explained it to me is that she put that pain aside. And she said to me that she never thought she was going to die. She always knew she was going to go home. No matter what it was going to take, she was going home. And she said that a few times to me during the interview. And it made me think back to the way I felt during the attack in Ukraine, because I was there. I was lying on the floor. I was almost close to death. And I knew I was going home. I knew I was going to find a way and do whatever it took. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, about, does everyone have that ability? When your back is up against the wall and you're in these incredible, difficult situations, who can find that strength to get them through? And I was thinking back to someone I talked to in 2015, who was in the Bataclan theater in Paris when it was attacked in those ISIS attacks. And I remember talking to one person who was in there who said, when the gunman came in, I was so afraid, I just lay down and crouched my head and thought I knew I was going to die. And now they didn't kill her, but it was a total reversal of Maya's experience when she was taken by Gaza, or my own experience. And I always thought about that lady as well. And again, I wondered, why didn't she have the ability to get up and try and find an exit, to run, to try and get somewhere? Who has that and who doesn't? And throughout this podcast, I've been talking to a lot of people about resilience and where it comes from. Is it nature? Is it nurture? And I now think that it is a bit of both. And look, this will change as the podcast continues. I speak to different people and we have different ideas, but I think there are some people who are born to be leaders, some people who know what they've got to do to get out. And Maya is a prime example of that, because not only did she know she wasn't going to die, she was going to find a way to survive. Not only did she put the pain aside as she was taken through the tunnels of Gaza, but when she was being held, she knew she had to start to build relationships with the people holding her, Hamas. And she started to push that. She was seen by a doctor eventually inside Gaza who fixed on her foot totally incorrectly, but she knew she needed to get information from him. She needed to ask him questions. She needed to get more intel. So the whole time she was proactively working hard to do the best she could to survive and get out of it. And that sort of action makes me think of some of the people who came in to save me in Ukraine, these incredible veterans, Medal of Honor winner, Bronze Star winner, Seaspray, Bo. And, I've talked about some of these characters who came in with Save Our Hours to find me, but I've spoken to them and they are the same kind of people. When they're in danger or when they have to do something, they don't stop moving. They don't stop asking questions. They don't stop looking for solutions. And it's a remarkable quality that Maya had, that those people have. I like to think I have. And so I think resilience is about being born with it, but it's also about putting in the effort and the work and not stopping and asking questions. And I think that Maya is a prime example of that. I don't know if some of you listened to our first podcast, very first one. We had a guest on called Rich Fierro. He stopped a mass shooting. He was the guy that jumped up and ran towards the shooter in this nightclub. And if it wasn't for him and his actions, dozens of people could have been killed. And I asked him the same question, because he said many people were just trying to get out. They weren't trying to stop it. And this comes into, do you want to fight or do you want to flee, I suppose? And his answer was very interesting, because he said he doesn't think everyone should be the guys that fight and have that desire to push forward, because he thinks a society should be made up of people who are all have different skills and different qualities. So it's fascinating hearing from him about what drove him to move forward, what drove him to act in these difficult situations as well.
You're listening to Searching for Heroes with Benjamin Hall. We'll be right back.
So Maya Regev is someone who I think that interview will stick with me forever, listening to her and comparing her experiences to mine. And I will say that actually doing that interview, talking to her, I found to be really difficult as well. One of the first times that I've done an interview in my entire career as being a journalist where I spoke to someone who had such a similar experience to myself. And for the first time, I knew what that experience was like. And I knew what she had gone through. And don't get me wrong, she went through a lot worse than I went through. I was badly injured, but she was badly injured and taken prisoner by Hamas and held in terrible conditions for 53 days. And so when I met her and I saw her in Israel a couple of months ago, she was at the beginning of her recovery. And that's one of the other reasons why she fascinates me so much. I was fascinated by what it was like when she was inside and being held by Hamas. But what I now know is what the recovery is like. So I met her in hospital. The doctors had managed to kind of correct, save her foot. But it was going to be months of recovery, months of physio, the same kind of physio that I had. And I think that's one of the reasons that I was actually allowed to talk to her, because one of the ladies who was helping to do her therapy saw my injuries, saw that I had gone through it and said, well, that's a great thing for her to see too. That can help her see the path forward. That's why I was able to talk to her. But she was still trying to think about what it meant, about what her future looked like. And I think this is going to be true for anyone who goes through something which is difficult. And it doesn't have to be at the levels that we're talking about. How do you let something bad that happens in your life, how are you aware of it, but don't let it define you? I know that I will forever be defined as, I walk on prosthetic legs. Like, I know that will always be with me. People will always know that I was attacked in Ukraine. But you don't want that to become the only identity you have. And I know that Maya was going through the same ideas. It's that she didn't want that to be the only thing that she was known for. And she was balancing how you can both live with that while also chasing your own dreams. And I think that is another real example of resilience and strength. Instead of giving in and saying, I'm so badly wounded, I don't know the path forward, she was saying, what physio do I have to do? How do I do it? How do I get on a path? And she actually used the term, she wants to be dancing again, because she was dancing when Hamas raided that music festival. And so again, I saw her message and I interviewed her. And I just saw all these incredible signs of someone who wasn't being stopped by something terrible, who was always looking ahead and who wasn't going to let it define them too much. And I know she wants to go on and become a doctor after this. So she's at the beginning right now. And I know firmly that it's a bit of a journey when you go through something serious. At first, you're so thrilled and excited that you are alive, that you are able to look forward. And then you start to learn to live with your injuries. And then I'd say you have to figure out a point where you can both live with them but not let them define you. That's a thought that came to my own mind in March, because I was in New York. It was the second anniversary of the attack in Ukraine. And I was telling the story many times. The paperback of my book had come out, and I was doing a lot of interviews, and I was telling the story again and again. And I realized that on the last day that I was in town, you reach a point where you can't just keep repeating the same story. You know, how many times can you tell a story with the same sort of conviction or emotion if you say it again and again and again? And I realized for the first time that with my own recovery, I perhaps reached a point where you can't just keep talking about what happened. You've got to put that to rest at one point and look forward. And I know exactly that's what Maya will reach at some point. Because how many times can you have someone come up to you? I mean, honestly, in my life, since the attack, it's like a few times a day people come up and ask me, gosh, tell me what happened in Ukraine. And there's only so many times you can talk it. So you have this battle between wanting to move forward, but also obviously, wanting to be polite to people who ask you about it. So you have to balance that out. And that's got to be very personal for whatever you're going through. And I guess I would say this to all of the people listening. It doesn't matter how serious it is, what you're going through. It's about finding a way through. And one of the other things that I spoke to Maya about was not just finding a way through, but can someone ever be prepared? So I guess I've spoken so far in this monologue about what it's like inside something that terrible. Can you get through it? About what it's like afterwards, not letting it define you. But one of the most interesting things is, what can you do before? Is there a way of preparing yourself to behave in the right way, to find the strength, to find the courage? Can you find that position? Can you do that? And I think, yes, I think to a certain degree you can. Like I said earlier, it's both nature, but it's also nurture. And if you look at the guys who came to see me in Ukraine, who saved me in Ukraine, their mind clicked into another mode. They knew that they had to reach goals, that they had to achieve certain things. And I think I went through the same thing. And I learned that before the attack. It was something that I think my parents taught me how to do. It was something that I learned in my career. If you want to reach a goal, you have to follow certain steps. You've got to put in the hard work. And so I really think that those qualities helped me get through. I know those qualities helped Maya get through because she had those kind of qualities in her past as well. And I know they helped many of the other people that I've spoken get through. And so I don't think you can just say, I was born with resilience and I was ready for something bad to happen or in a position to. I think you can say some people are born with a degree of resilience, but that you can either lose that or you can grow it. You've got to figure out what you're not doing so well at, or figure out how to get through something difficult and try with the small things rather than the bigger events. And so I think that's what I have learned most. And what I have learned in particular over the last few weeks that we've been editing this Fox Nation special and talking to these survivors again, some of the people who managed to get through it. You can both prepare for something, then you have to learn how to turn it on when you need it, and then you have to make sure it doesn't define you afterwards. And I wish that I had a really good answer about how you can do that, but I suppose that's the point of the podcast. I suppose that's the point of our guests, and what I hope you come to listen to on this podcast is listening to them and perhaps channeling some of them, finding something that helped them help you, rather. So thank you for listening. Those are my thoughts for the day. And go and watch the Fox Nation special. Please do. I think that we are 6 months after the attacks in October 7th, 6 months after. And I think many people are forgetting why it started and perhaps why it's continuing. And that is because there was a terrible terror attack. Innocent civilians were taken and captured, and women and children and elderly were and still are being held captive in Gaza. And so what we wanted to do was go out and make this special. So again, please listen, watch it if you can on Fox Nation. But more than anything, it's been really exciting for me to do it and for me to come face to face, perhaps for the first time since the attack that injured me, really come face to face and in depth in these sort of conflict stories and people who got through them. So look, I hope you guys are all well. Thank you again for listening. Have a wonderful day today. Go out, hug your family. They're the most important things in your life. And never, ever, ever, never give up. No matter how bad it is, there is a way through. Speak to you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.